Okay, we have some introductions to do at the start of our meeting today. So second part of new administrator introductions, and then excited for some additional introductions after that as well, which I will get to. So first, why don't we start off with new administrators introduction, Superintendent?
Great. I'd like to welcome up Sherry Cox, Executive Director of Secondary Schools and Education, to welcome our first administrator of the evening.
Good evening, directors and everyone else and our fine students here. My name is Sherry Cox and I'm the Executive Director of Secondary Education. And I have the honor tonight of introducing Jordan Frost. Jordan is a proud graduate of Washington State University. He wants me to say go Cougs. I'm a Spartan though, and not a Skyline Spartan, a Spartan. But anyway, go Cougs. His first job upon graduation was teaching psychology and world history at Issaquah High School, where he went on to serve multiple roles for the Issaquah Eagles, including the activities director and athletic director. And if I'm not mistaken, he may have gone to high school there. No, which high school? Oh, so close. Well, there are principals in this district who taught Jordan Frost as a student. So previously, Jordan also served at the district office as the assistant director for student interventions. In addition to his work with the district, Jordan is a member of the board of directors of the Garage Teen Cafe and serves on the WSU as a member of the Pullman Chancellor's Advisory Council. Jordan is excited to lead in this brand new role and support all of our secondary schools. And I am personally thrilled to have Jordan on our team. So with that, Jordan Frost.
Thank you, Sherry, for the introduction, and Superintendent Taliek, thank you for the opportunity to serve in this role. And I want to give a special thank you to our school board members for being such strong supporters of athletics and activities. I know you all value how much it helps whole child development. So I'm really looking forward to leading this role and carry the work forward. Thank you.
Right. Our second introduction tonight, I'm doing on behalf of Elena Sividasan, who has a conflict for the beginning of this meeting, but will be joining by Zoom shortly. It is my pleasure to introduce Noah Westerberg, who is serving as our Director of Counseling and Wellbeing, Student Wellbeing. Noah has worked as a school counselor in the Lake Washington School District for 7 years, primarily at the middle school level. In that role, most previous role, Noah was a counseling specialist for the district. In that position, he supported the comprehensive school counseling program and mental health supports for the Lake Washington School District community. He is excited to bring his school counseling and student wellbeing expertise to support students and families in the Issaquah School District. Noah enjoys traveling and watching Seattle sporting events with his family. And I want to explain this introduction in a different way, or it'll be a bit different, which will be Noah will be using a Maori way of introducing himself as a way of modeling a culturally responsive way of doing introductions. The Maori introduce themselves to others based on the concept of place, name, and intention. And the Maori people give names to place which recount history, identity, and a sense of belonging. For the Maori, names are seen as markers that link us to the land, our history, and our common identity. And they see these things rather than titles and what you do for a living as a meaningful way to connect with one another. Welcome, Noah, and I'll let you share your introduction.
Great, thank you. So I'll start with place. So my place is the Pacific Northwest. I was raised here. I grew up in Eastern Washington. Went to college in Pullman, go Cougs. Spent some time living in Portland, Oregon, and then came up to the Seattle area for graduate school a little bit over 13 years ago. So I've been here ever since, working and living in Seattle. And then my name. So my name's important to me because I was actually born in South Korea and adopted when I was a baby. So Noah Westerberg is my adopted name. Westerberg is actually a German name, if you wouldn't know that if I didn't tell you. But that means a lot to me just because it has a lot of familial and cultural importance to me. And then my intent, jumping into a new role, there's a lot of ideas and things that I want to do. But one of my main priorities is really focusing on building relationships over these first few months. So I've been trying to get into as many schools, getting out in the community and meeting our partners as much as I can, and intend to keep on doing that. Yes. So thank you so much for this opportunity. It's it's really nice to be here tonight, and I'm looking forward to serving the families and students of the Issaquah School District.
Welcome. And welcome to you both. We'll continue our introductions with Directors Weaver and Moraldo introducing our new 2023-24 student representatives to the board.
Well, first off, I'm really excited that 8 of our 9 reps seem to be here. So yay for attendance. I wanted to just preface this by saying that the selection of these student reps was incredibly difficult. We had a total of 77 students apply. We had 4 from Gibson Eck, that's a small school. We had 23 from Issaquah High, from whom we had to choose 2. We had 15 from Liberty, and we were only choosing 1, and 35 from Skyline, and we had to choose 2. And we have shifted over to the model where each school has a junior and a senior student representative, and we are very hopeful that that junior person will continue on next year when they are a senior. So we have a mentoring thing going on. Liberty is our one-time exception because we had 2 now seniors, juniors last year who were willing to come back. Thank you, Jack and Mia. And so we that's why we only chose 1 from Liberty, which was our junior. So I guess we'll just start from Gibson Eck. We have Hava Alcorn. If you would just wave or something. And Leilani is not here. I'm not sure how to pronounce her last name. I want to go with Mathieu de Siga, but that might be my French background. She might do that differently. I will check. From Issaquah High, we have Naomi Wu is our junior, and Siddharth Basri, is that right? Basri is our senior. Thank you very much for being here. Liberty, we have Aditi Marhale. Did I get that right? Okay, I'm having trouble with last names. I know the first ones, and she is our junior. And then
Mia Williamson
and Jack O'Connell are our seniors from Liberty. Thank you so much for coming back. And these are your go-to people because they were here last year, so they have some idea of how it all works. And last, but certainly not least, from Skyline, we have Deshita, is it Jane? Okay, who is our junior, and Nathan Pan is our senior.
Right.
And
I will note that Leilani is online on Zoom. She had a known conflict, so we knew she would be joining on Zoom instead of in person. So we have full 100% attendance.
oh, great. Okay, I
That's
didn't realize that.
fantastic.
Did you want-
And I always say it's been wonderful to see as a board how we're growing in our work of engaging students in this work and really kind of bringing a higher level of not only expectation, but involvement of the students. And I think it's going to be really helpful. So we're in the 2nd year of doing it this way. And so we're still kind of building it as we fly. Whoop. Somebody has me on. But I do appreciate that. I think it's going to be a great year and that you've decided to dedicate your time to this. So we're really excited to hear from students and having you more involved in the actual work and some of the conversations. And especially for those of you that were able to attend at least a little bit of the previous meeting about bonds, it's actually really important. Where does the money come from? Where is it going and how do we get it? So thank you so much for your willingness to be here and participate.
Yeah, so there's not any formal student input at this meeting, but you're all there. You do have mics. So if at any point in the meeting you would like to participate, interject something, ask a question, raise your hand. And if President Mullings doesn't see you, maybe one of the rest of us will, and we'll elbow her and get her to call on you. We're not used to this either, so it may take us a little bit of getting used to. Please be patient with us. But welcome, we're thrilled to have you all here.
And if you'd like, the students may have prepared just one sentence about what they're excited for. If that's something that you'd like to bring forward
That
now.
would be great.
And we can maybe have Leilani go first to bring her off mute to make sure we get that seamlessly done. And then we can go in order from Jack through Hava.
Hello. My name is Leilani, and one reason why I'm excited for serving is basically to figure out ways that I can get the whole school involved in the data collection since I go to a small school, so that every student can feel like their voice can make impact.
Thank you.
My name is Jack O'Connell from Liberty High School. I'm really excited to be coming back in this new format. I'm really excited again to be getting more student input and returning it to the board.
I'm Mia Williamson, and I'm also from Liberty High School, and I'm really excited to see how the position grows and how we can help the board more with input.
Hi, my name is Nathan Pan. I'm a senior at Skyline High School, and I'm super excited this year to represent all voices at my school, especially those that may not have someone that speaks up for them. And I'm also passionate about advocating for things that I'm interested in, such as sustainability and equity.
Hi, my name's Nishita Jane, and I'm really excited to be an advocate for students at my school and to have a new experience.
Hi, my name is Aditi Marahali. I go to Liberty High School, and I'm excited to be able to help bridge the gap between our students and the board.
Hello, my name is Siddharth Basri, senior at Issaquah High School. The thing I'm most excited about is representing student voice.
Hello, my name is Naomi Wu. I am a junior at Issaquah High School. I'm also very excited to connect our students with the school board as well as our staff at our school. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Hava Alcorn, and I'm a junior at Gibsonac High School. I'm really excited to help students at my school feel more connected to their administration and like their voice really matters.
Awesome. Thank you. Awesome. Well, welcome. We're glad you're here, and we look forward to hearing from you throughout this meeting and all the future ones. So next, what we'll do is we will move on to our public comment section. This is an opportunity for the board to receive public statements on items not listed on the meeting agenda for public comment. If you have a point of view for a specific agenda item, I'll ask that you hold that until I request comments during that particular agenda item. Public comment time is not intended as a time to raise issues unique to a particular student, staff member, or administrator. Rather, it is time to provide your insights on issues more generally and of a wider concern. As a general rule, the board will not respond to public comment. I ask to begin your comments by clearly stating your name, school attendance area. Please limit your comments to 2 minutes. We will be using a timer. The board neither endorses nor censors any opinions expressed during public input. Please keep your comments civil and respectful. Avoid personal attacks on others. We will start with public comment. Folks in the room, I have one signed up, and then we will go to Zoom. So first up on the list, I have Kathleen Myers.
Hello. My name is Kathleen Myers, and I am a doubly certificated math and CTE teacher at Issaquah High School. For 10 years, I have been teaching personal finance class, and there are currently 6 sections of the class at IHS. Personal finance can function as a third-year math or CTE class for graduation requirements or as an elective. It is project-based and includes a lot of math. I have students of all math abilities who take the class. I am passionate about this class because I have used so much of what I teach in my own life, and I have taught it to my own adult children. It is so valuable to them, and I love to teach it to our high school juniors and seniors as they prepare for their adult life. Throughout the course, I teach students to spend responsibly, stay out of debt, and save for the future. They do projects that simulate life financial decisions and their outcomes. When I see former students in the community after graduation, they are often excited to tell me about their financial decisions, their 401k, their jobs, and their investments. They tell me they are grateful for the lessons they learned in personal finance class because they are using what they have learned. Many of my students tell me they love what they are learning, and it should be required for all students. Many of their parents tell me that they wish they had this class in high school. According to a national poll in April 2022 by National Endowment for Financial Education, 88% of adults said they wanted all schools to require either a semester or a year-long personal finance course. I agree with them, which is why I'm addressing you today. There is an organization called Next Generation Personal Finance that is working to get every state to require at least one semester of personal finance in all schools, all high schools by 2030. Currently, 22 states have this requirement, but Washington is not one of them. I believe it's inevitable, and with the momentum we have, our district should lead the way to encourage financial literacy for our students before graduation, whether or not it's required by the state. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Are there any other comments in the room? Are there any on Zoom? Thank you. Seeing none on Zoom. On behalf of the board, I'd like to thank you for attending our meeting and sharing your point of view. We will now turn to the next item on the agenda, which is approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I move the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Second.
Thank you. The consent agenda is a meeting management tool whereby the board's able to pass multiple items in one motion, and items have been reviewed by the board prior to the meeting. With that, we'll take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
None against. That motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have the establishment of the regular agenda. Superintendent, are there any changes?
There are no changes.
Thank you. And with that, we can go into our first item on the regular agenda, which is a recap of our work study that we held prior to the start of this meeting. It was focused this evening on board or bond planning and scheduling. So who would like to get us started in thoughts or review of the work study?
First off, I'd like to thank finance for all the work they did on this. We reviewed projected enrollment trends. We reviewed the probable timeline of running a bond from the beginning of this conversation to an actual election date, and where we might have wiggle room and where we might not. We talked a bit about various pros and cons of calendaring it, February, April, August, November. We talked about tax rates a little bit, and what we know about what we would put in a potential bond, and what we still need to figure out in terms of what a lot of those things would cost. And I think hopefully the board gave the administration enough questions and thoughts to move to the next step. That's sort of a general overview.
Thank you. Director Maraldo?
I think it was good to reflect on, I appreciated some of the historical context that was put together for us to understand what's happened in the past. When have we had elections? How much were they for? Which was really good to be able to see over time. But it has been a long time since we've had a bond. 2016, if you look historically, for a while we were having them more consistently as the district was growing. But I think just looking at what historically we've done and the need to really take a look at what are our needs as a district, and is it time for us to be running a bond again? So that was really good data for us to get. I think for me, I think at the top of my list is looking at the priorities for high school. What are we doing at each one? So the board received some data regarding WANIC involvement, which WANIC is kind of a CTE opportunity. We don't have skill centers, but we have different schools with the different districts in the area that have opportunities, such as it might be going to Renton Tech, it might be going to DigiPen for something, or going to a program at Newport High School that's related to you. At the end of it, you're Cisco certified, or Cisco network certified. So what are those opportunities? And right now, the only one we present in our entire school district is around sports med, which draws students from other districts as well. But what are the opportunities at our high school, at each of our high school? We should have a WANIC program, I think, at each one. So what are we doing within each school to really commit to career development? I still look at our statistics. We still have a strong portion of our students that actually do not go to a four-year college straight out of school. So what are we doing that? And I don't remember the number off the top of my head. I know not too long ago, it was a third of our students. So what are we doing for 1/3 of our students? And then how does that play into what happens to a building? If we wanted to offer a program, would there be actual capital changes that we would need to make at the high schools? And I think for me, that is a huge thing I'd like us to focus on, really getting to the career aspect. There is such a shift in students going to four-year institutions out of high school. And so where are we in responding to that? And I think that that's a strong need.
I couldn't agree more. I think this is a unique opportunity for us to reimagine what high school looks like across our district. And I think we need to do that on behalf of all the students coming through. I think the unique thing is in 2015, when this board put together the proposal for the 2016 bond, it was for the need yesterday of high school. And we're still continuing to grow our high school enrollment despite our overall district enrollment declining. And that's why you guys all feel the building's very full. Even this year, opened 80 students above projection for our high schools. And so the need is continued and probably going to be structurally different because of the cost of housing in our district, that it will be pressure on our high schools more than pressure on our elementary schools. And so I think that it's going to be incumbent on this process for us to remind the community why this is such an important thing, not just because our high schools are overcrowded, but it is a chance to reimagine them. We got briefed at the last meeting about the needs coming up for changes that the state has mandated that all buildings of a certain size have to do, which is going to be a big impact. And then I know these are less important to some people in the community, but I think we have to make sure that we're investing in our field and open spaces. And part of that is making sure that we have lights at all of our middle schools, because if we're going to make the investment of putting turf on them for a community asset, then we need to be able to use them all year round. And given that our community, it gets dark at 4 something many months of the year, that's a big deal. And so I think making that investment, and I know Cougar Mountain Middle School was built to be light ready. And so I think we need to make sure that those are also parts of it, because what we just heard from our new director of counseling and is that and athletics is that student well-being, and part of student well-being is not just what's in the classroom. And but we need to create the space for them to do it.
Thank you. I think also appreciative of just I'd say the quality and completeness of the information. Super helpful to be able to go through, which was great. I think coupled with our last couple of capital projects updates, those have been really good and really clear on what work has been needed, what work has been getting completed, what we have going forward in the maintenance of existing buildings as well. I think makes for a super clear conversation about what the needs are. And so I just appreciate all the work it takes to pull together this level of information and data for us. It's very helpful. Anything you wanted to add, Superintendent?
Yes, I'd like to specifically thank Martin Turney, Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer, for leading the discussion on behalf of the team to support the board for getting input. And then I'd also like to say our next steps, which are to come back to the board with a plan. So we're formally initiating this process and being very clear about that and taking into account all the discussion and the comments reflected just now. Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, what we'll do is move to our next agenda item, which is some additional updates on the student representative program coming into this year. Now that we've met all of our great new student reps, it'd be good to hear a little bit about the program and the onboarding process, et cetera. Director Weaver Moraldo, are we turning over to you? Or are we bringing?
Well, okay, no,
No, it doesn't
I
have to
mean,
be
the
you.
main thing is we did have a 3-hour onboarding meeting with the students, which I don't know, they could say was probably a little bit overwhelming, but we tried to give them a lot of the basic information of the reps in terms of board meetings. We talked about conference. Students coming to the general meeting in November, the general conference, and joining the Boston Student Network. And then giving the opportunity to talk with other students of other districts. And then just the general logistics of how you communicate with one another, all of that. I think it was a lot to let you know at once, but when you get the word moves under your feet, and you start to have more questions and great about this thing, and then you can follow up with another meeting. Director Geraldo and I talked about the governance of the district and the board's role. And now I'm embracing. And Obama talked about the connection to ASB and help students to work with the ASB to both collect information and send it back. And then we had some breakout sessions where we put the group in top and Geraldo was in charge of ends to academic ends, and I was in charge of executive limitation 12 on some of the practices, and we just fired on questions and concerns and had some really interesting conversations and finished up with students ideas about how it might
And Executive Director Mellish helped with that, and I think will be really resourceful as far as really understanding if you're doing a questionnaire, if you're doing a survey, how to do that in a way that is non-biased, that is able to get the feedback that you're actually looking for. So I think some of the staff support I really have appreciated this year. I can definitely feel the difference already from the support of staff to be able to allow the students to have a single point of contact. So Marcel Hauser's doing that. And so I think there's more organization on our part to really support students to be able to do better work on their part. So I do appreciate that.
I don't know if this is a good opportunity to hear from any of the students if you want to comment on your onboarding or even questions you may still have so we can make sure we get them answered. Or Mia and Jack can say if they feel like it's so much better this year.
Just promise me you won't be this quiet for every meeting.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I'll try to do on different topics. Throw to you guys to see if there's something you want to add to the discussion.
And
So
then,
make
of
sure
course, starting at the next meeting, and I unfortunately don't have the schedule in front of me, but I know that we will have students. It's you two, it's Jack and Mia, who are going to come and present on their executive limitations at that meeting. I believe also the executive limitations were assigned. The students are having prep meetings before each meeting with Marcel Hauser. And I don't know, what about? I think that's most of it.
I think that's most of it. And we did originally anticipate we would have students up on the dais, but we're just a little concerned about with the rise in COVID, especially as we have a doctor, an actual doctor on the board. And the last thing we want to do is expose him or have him expose the students. So we're going to wait until it dies down a little bit before we bring students on board up here.
But we do want to do that because I think it just gives you a different perspective when you're up here and you're part of the meeting, and it makes it much easier to get involved in the conversations. The good news is we don't have those big things, plexiglass between us anymore. So
yes,
the world's a bit.
But I was going to say, we did offer the students a chance to sit in our seats
Oh,
And they really liked the way it felt.
That's true. We did have a field trip in the border.
I think there's a picture out there somewhere.
oh, we have to see if legally I can do a president for a day. We'll find out. One
So
of you can run
anyway,
the
I
meeting.
think we're planning to have at least 2 more onboarding / recap meetings to discuss any concerns and questions and maybe do a deeper dive into policy governance. But that's just me. So, and of course, anytime Director Moraldo and I are always available if you want to email questions or anything like that. We're happy to discuss.
Awesome. Thank you. Great job. I'm excited for the year. Any thoughts come across for you guys before I go forward? Okay. All right. Next on our agenda, Superintendent, I'll turn it over to you for works in progress.
Great. I thought that I would take this opportunity to highlight the variety of visits that I've been making just to uplift the cool things that I've gotten to get a short visible look into for the start of the school year. I've been to 19 of our 32 sites for programs and facilities and schools across the district as of today. And that doesn't include this site because I do work here every day, so I'm always here. Yes, I can count that as 20. But for transportation, I just want to really appreciate all the team members, mechanics, and our drivers and our routers and our dispatchers and our whole team in the transportation department for navigating all the different road construction considerations. I saw on the first day of school many of our bus drivers get into the transportation center in downtown Issaquah early just to make sure they were prepared and ready to go. Many of them were doing some test runs just to sort of go around the block because that was an area that was affected by construction. At Issaquah High School, I saw a very powerful and fun and action-packed welcome 9th grade assembly that was planned by the more senior students in the school building. There was a relay race that had to do with putting a pillowcase on a pillow for teams. And that was very revealing about, who knew how to put a pillowcase on, what strategies do they use? And that sort of led to some of the eventual winners of that activity. Issaquah Valley Elementary, our safety security team in particular and transportation, the routes there have been redone to make it more seamless for parents. And so that's a really important note to say that our safety and security operations team, and you'll hear more about that later, have also done a lot to make sure that the arrival process and pickup for families is also very seamless and smooth. At Issaquah Middle School, I saw a lot of evidence of starting with how do you organize yourself? And those are very important skills when you move into middle school in particular, but just organizing a notebook, organizing your information, and how you manage your timelines is a very, as I said, important executive function skill. Clark Elementary was all about lunch and, our students remembering especially our youngest students remembering their student ID for lunch. So I was put to work immediately to help with giving out student ID numbers to our youngest learners on Post-it notes so that we could not hold back the line. And then I got to go to Gibson Neck and hear a bit more about how our different students were thinking about their exploration time and to start the design process for the year. At Maywood Middle School, I saw Mr. Price, who's also at Liberty, build the music pipeline. So I got to see him set expectations and start automatically with some vocal exercises at the middle school, which was really fun and exciting because he was diving right in with the students. At Briar Elementary School, and there's a continuation of this one because I went to 2 elementary schools at lunchtime, and so it was brunch for lunch on Wednesday, which is the waffles, which is, as many people know, a fan favorite, but also extremely messy. And I did see a 2nd grader enjoy salad with ketchup and mustard, which apparently has been something the student has been doing since kindergarten. So that was an interesting, I just learned something new about food choices. Kindergartners at Apollo wear name crowns, so we can get them familiar with each other and we can get familiar with them. And it's also very fun to wear a crown to school. At Pine Lake, I saw a 6th grade expectation setting opportunity for, how do you orient to the school, which is another important thing as you transition to moving between classes. There were many lessons at Sunset Elementary School around the use of character strong and purposeful people. So I saw a great activity with the classroom teachers around how they were building community in their school. And at Discovery, just really strong arrival. I mean, sometimes I caught people at different times of the day, which is why I get just like a little short snapshot. Just really strong expectations. And a lot of our caregivers were very, very good at like releasing kindergartners in particular, because sometimes there's that desire to stay connected to your parent or guardian. But there's very strong separation and preparation for independence. Creekside, we saw a great assembly focus on respect, theme of the month, utilizing a book that had an otter as a character to talk about how to show respect and how to receive respect. At Skyline, got to be in a classroom and have actually, because there was some independent work happening to start the day, a really strong conversation with one of the teachers on artificial intelligence and how to ensure that our students are prepared to use artificial intelligence across all components of their educational career and beyond. At Holly Street, there's a new, playground is part 2 of, I guess, there's many parts and phases of the playground, but it has been complete. And the students were enjoying the sun, to Director Gallagher's point around sun and daylight. They were enjoying both the sun and the daylight by making sun angels on the ground. And at Maple Hills, really great just K readiness activities as students came right in the door with alphabet and number recognition. At Liberty High School, saw again some great opportunities in classrooms where our teachers are implementing universal design for learning strategies to help further engage our students and give them many opportunities for representing their knowledge. Endeavor, great. Oh, this is one of my favorite things. When you walk into a classroom, can you predict what the standard is? And so oftentimes that's what I do, is like, what is the standard they're working on? And saw a gym class where there was a great opportunity to work on both teamwork and following directions for multiple steps of directions of new activities in a relay race. And at Sunny Hills, just amazing readers. I really saw a lot of content material that reflects our students' background and interest areas across all classrooms in the library. So that's just a window into the world of what's happening across the district and all our schools. And that completes my update for right now.
Awesome, thank you. I went to curriculum night at PCMS last week. It was great. So next, what we have up to build on what's going on in the schools is an operations update to give us a sense of, I guess, on a broader sense of how we're opening schools this year. Superintendent.
Great. I'll welcome up Jason Morse and he'll introduce himself.
Thank you, Superintendent. I appreciate your update and your kind words about day 1 of school. Superintendent and the board, I have a PowerPoint prepared to update on operations for the start of the school year. Purpose, provide an operations update in support of the start of the school year. But before I do that, I really want to take an opportunity to offer out a big thank you to our operations team members. I can go through the updates and tell the story, but it's our employees, it's our workers every day that are getting it done. And they really did spend the summer preparing our school district for our kids. And I've received a lot of great reports, which I included in the end of my presentation. But I want to give a shout out, a big thank you to our bus drivers, our custodians, our maintenance employees, who they spend the summer working so we can be ready for the start of school, which is an exciting time. So I wanted to start off with a few highlights from our food services department. So we made some changes in our equity and our communication models this year. We have translated our free reduced materials to the 10 preferred languages in our district. They're listed here on the PowerPoint. We've been working with our communications department to leverage school messenger to communicate lunch balances and to send those communications in preferred languages to hopefully have a more equitable communication model. We did an update with other departments, my colleagues, thank you, in the EVP process. So before school, when families are signing up, we basically made an adjustment as to how the free and reduced lunch information is available to families, and it made a big difference. We had last year total just right around 2,000 students who qualified for free and reduced lunch. And at the start of the school year, we had about 1,100 of those 2,000 in the system and qualified. Well, what typically has happened in the past is those applications come in throughout the school year. Because of a more proactive approach with the EVP process, we qualified 2,300 applications, 200 more than our last year's total before the first day of school, which means all of those students were receiving that benefit day one of school. And for 3 of those schools, that included breakfast. So that small change in how we do business, in my mind's eye, made a big difference because students had the access to those benefits to start the school year. So our system's changing to meet the need. We're serving breakfast at Issaquah High, Issaquah Middle, and Clark. And I am in the process and working with Issaquah Valley, Sunset, Challenger, and Apollo to spread breakfast opportunities there later this fall. So I'm meeting with the Issaquah Valley elementary staff in about 10 days, and we've done all the prep work. So we're doing our final meeting, and we're going to roll that out start of October, and then we're going to get right into Sunset and the other schools. I want to put just a little shout out. Clark Elementary School today set a record for breakfasts served. We served 80 breakfasts today at Clark Elementary alone. That's the most in a single day we've ever served. So that program is well received. Our top day last year was 74, and our average was more like 57 on the day. So we've registered 2 in the high 70s and 80 today. So we're really rolling at Clark. Makes me really happy for those students. A couple more food service highlights. This is a pilot program we've been running for a couple years. We got slowed down by the pandemic, but this is a program called our Component Bar. And so this offers students a self-select fruit or veggie option. It expands the type of fruits and veggies we can offer to students, limiting prep time and minimizing waste. There's no limit. We just ask the kids take what they can consume, so we're not wasting. They can also access the salad bar. So there's 2 opportunities for fruits and vegetables. We're offering this right now at Sunny Hills, Briarwood, Cougar Ridge, and Cedar Trails. And anecdotally, what we're seeing kids take more fruits and vegetables because there's choice involved. We believe that's the key component here, is kids can choose. Now, at other elementary schools that don't have this, that's my next slide, they still have great options for fruits and veggies. The primary difference is, though, the staff pre-package the fruits and vegetable options for the kids. So the kids have a choice, but it's pre-packaged. Whereas a component bar, the students have a lot more autonomy to select the fruits and vegetables that they're after. So every elementary school and secondary school also has a salad bar. This salad bar picture is a little more fruit oriented. This is actually one of our elementary schools. The secondary schools are a little more complex, but this is an example of a salad bar that's also available to kids. This is actually Discovery. And the day I took this picture, I don't know if you can see, but the middle bin is sliced strawberries. And the kids, I barely got that picture taken before those things were mopped up and out of there. Just a lot of joy and a lot of excitement for healthy options for lunch. So every school salad bar, our component bars, we may look at expanding that moving forward. That's kind of a facilities opportunity as far as purchasing the correct equipment to display those food items. So this is a snapshot of what breakfast looks like at Clark. So you have various choices. Mandarin oranges in the package there are pretty popular. I want to make a special note, the cereal options are not the same cereal options that you buy at Fred Meyer. They may say Fruit Loops or something of that nature, but they actually are prepared to meet our sugar and health standards for our district. So I want to be just very clear about that those cereals do meet our health standards. You've got some protein options. String cheese is an option, yogurt. You've got the packaged fruit, the fresh fruit, the sunflower they're like an Uncrustable, but they're non-peanut butter based, and your milk option. We also serve hot options as well. So typically on Mondays and Wednesdays, we'll serve like a breakfast sandwich or a hot entree at breakfast, hoping to get those Monday morning kiddos there for a nice hot breakfast. So for facilities and maintenance, shout out to our custodians. The clean buildings over the summer is a big lift, and they do it with delight, I think. And the shorter summer seems to get, the faster that approaches us. We've implemented a brand new work order system for the district. We estimate that cost savings just for the subscription to the software is going to land us in the $15,000 to $20,000 of cost savings. We believe the service is better, the efficiency is better, and it tracks our data better for us. So this is an exciting situation where we've shopped around for some different software that we think serves our needs better and actually saves us a little money. 470 work orders over the summer. We do about 4,000 a year. The important piece here is that we're doing work orders that just don't get finished well when kids are in the building. So a lot of our work orders are projects that are best done when kids and staff are out. We really leverage that short, quick summer to try to get as much of that done. So some examples of that, parking lot striping at Challenger, Cougar Ridge, transportation, both facilities, Skyline, Beaver Lake, and here at the admin building. We superintendent mentioned we restriped and reconfigured Issaquah Valley Elementary. We partnered with the principal there, Vanessa Garcia, and took with our safety and security department, our facilities department, capital projects. We rerouted how the parking lot flows, and we began getting good feedback. We reduced the amount of crosswalks that needed to be supervised, which we believe is an important safety feature, and tried to clean up the flow of that traffic. So that's a good example of a summer project. And then field care, playground maintenance throughout the district. So the next slide shows one of our projects, Liberty High School. Our grounds department special project, they installed a bullpen for the softball field over the summer at the request of the building, which that's it in process. They're laying gravel down. They came back and put turf over it, and now we'll have a brand new bullpen. And then just bed maintenance at all of our sites. If you drive around the district, a lot of the flower beds are looking really, really sharp. This happens to be Maywood Middle School, and I thought with that sidewalk, it just looks spectacular, but our grounds crew works all summer because that stuff never quits growing, and they keep at it. Transportation highlights. So we provided transportation over this for summer school over the summer. So we're not totally off for that particular time frame. We provide driver training throughout the summer, and we've been focusing on de-escalation strategies. We scored 100% on our state patrol inspection for buses and our white fleet. Our white fleet is basically our maintenance vehicles. We overhauled the bus wash. We made improvements to the Issaquah Middle and Issaquah High School bus loading zone. Thank you to the admin at both of those buildings for helping us. We brought the bus loading zone back to Issaquah High. And the reasoning there was we were trying to take pressure off of Issaquah Middle School. So we took 11 buses and separated that. It's closer for the high school students, and it takes a little pressure off the Issaquah Middle route. And then we've been balancing and refining route timing. We're still doing that. 2nd Avenue construction, which I drove through it yesterday. You could actually drive through it, which is ahead of schedule. But that's been a challenge for us. So here's some pictures. Miss Sharon there on your left. She's a longtime Cougar Ridge bus driver. Director Moore's not here, but I bet she might recognize Miss Sharon. The cabinet help, the middle photo is a little celebration for the start of the school year and to honor our transportation staff. The entire cabinet signed kind of this big sign as kind of a card to say thank you. And then we brought some treats down. And then yours truly and superintendent with Jesse Provine, our shop foreman, our lead mechanic, who is a key player in those 100% on the safety inspections. And superintendent was kind enough to spend a couple of hours at transportation on the first day of school, and it was a really busy place, but a joyful place. School safety and security. So our team attended the Washington State Safety Organization Conference in June. They focused again on de-escalation techniques, student mental health, and expanding the requirements for our student school resource officer training. Go ahead and pop to the next one. Some highlights. So our safety team provided training to our administrative staff over the summer, including a tabletop earthquake drill with all of our elementary principals. We spent about 3 hours with our elementary team. It was very, very instructional. A lot of great questions. We update our emergency response plan yearly. We've installed yet another repeater. Day Wireless was helping us just yesterday, and they commented on the sales rep believes that our radio system is one of the strongest in the state as far as public schools go. And what that does is it lets our radios all work inside of our school buildings. Issaquah High has been notorious for the construction of that building blocks radio signal, and now the radios are clear as a bell. That is key when we're talking about student safety, communication of our team, and responding to emergencies. Every building has 2 of those radios. They can communicate downtown with us and with our security team. Our safety team completed a Stop the Bleed training, which is an advanced first aid training. We did that in partnership with the King County Sheriff's Office, and we completed a fentanyl training and awareness workshop with the DEA this summer. So never stop learning, always busy. So couple of pictures. So on the your left here, Lloyd and Neil, that is one of our Stop the Bleeding training kits as they were doing that training. On the right, this is John and Jacob. They're actually drilling with the use of our security camera system to practice identifying potential intruders in a building so they can communicate over those radios. We actually partner with our admin staff too. So if there's a need to respond, whether it be to an emergency or a student concern, they're practicing navigating the system to communicate pertinent information to the team that is actually responding. Lloyd, same thing with the security system. On the right, Lloyd is at Cougar Mountain Middle School. We developed a sign. So there's actually a radar apparatus attached to that. It reads your speed as you come into the school zone. So our safety staff goes out to elementary schools, secondary, high schools, just to be an awareness piece, just to wave at folks and see your speed and try to make sure we're doing 10 miles an hour. We do not, for the record, we're not ticketing anyone. This is a friendly community relations piece for us. So part of the emergency response plan, we updated our air quality procedure. I worked closely with representatives from King County DOH last summer and have formed a strong partnership. And between our input and I'm sure other districts' input, brand new air quality guidelines. Our air quality has been pretty good this fall, so keep that going. But they, in partnership with our district, have helped us purchase air quality sensors so we can sense we can get accurate readings. And we're actually working on installing 2 more air quality meters in our district, one at Skyline and one at Liberty. So when you look at the air quality map, we'll actually have them at our 3 comprehensive high schools to get the best data to make good decisions around those types of situations. And then in about a week and a half, I'll be working with the comms department and the transportation department to update and prepare for winter weather. Challenges, road construction has been tough. There's been some on SR 900, 2nd Avenue. We're coming out of both of those. I've had emails from principals the last 2 days straight that the buses are on time. So we're getting better and we're refining that. And the construction seems to be backing down. Some of the changing traffic patterns, we just never know how long it's going to take to get down Sunset, for example. So we make those adjustments. And then I included some raves. I'm not going to read them all, but these are rave reviews that were sent to our comms department specifically for our operations staff, our custodians, our kitchen staff. I thought you guys might want to read that just to see what kind of response they're getting from their colleagues. Questions? Yes.
I did. I know you have the world of transportation, so all the best to you. I know that's not easy. So I didn't find out until the last board meeting. I think that you're already aware of the imminent closure of Lakemont for months and months. Do you know what that's going to do for ridership? I'm thinking specifically of the folks that go to Cougar Mountain Middle School
Mhm.
from both the Lakemont area
Mhm.
and the
Mhm.
Newcastle area, and what that's going to do for traffic for bus times. I'm thinking, how long are they going to be on the bus?
Yeah, it's not going to help. That's for darn sure. What they're doing a culvert repair for I don't know. I'm not sure which creek. Is it
I
Cold Creek?
drive
Maybe?
by it all the
Right.
time. Yeah.
And it's kind of in between, just past where the Cougar Mountain boundary would be, and into where the Newcastle side would be, over the hill there. So we have identified, working with our transportation department, an alternate route, and we serve in the neighborhood where that alternate route goes. So probably the actual impact to the route system, maybe 5 minutes. The wild card is going to be what happens to other traffic in that area. And so we're probably, I mean, we've already routed out, we've been in communication with the city of Bellevue. We have a plan. We're going to have to monitor and adjust to see what our other traffic car driving colleagues do. But I think it'll probably end up adding 5 to 10 minutes of route timing. But depending on, how others respond, it could be a little more invasive. So we have a plan, we'll exercise it, and then we'll adjust if needs be.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question. I appreciate it.
Can you speak to before and after school care, sort of how historically there have been wait lists and then we went into COVID and there wasn't?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious where we are now
Mhm.
as far as what is the capacity that we actually serve
Mhm.
compared to pre-COVID? And then what is the remaining need?
Right. Thank you. Good question. I didn't bring with me the exact enrollment. I can certainly look up the exact figures for you, even by building. We served right around 1,000 over the summer, which is getting us back to kind of our normal summer operation. Our numbers in the building, they've leveled off a little bit, but I would feel most comfortable if I could get you a building by building compare and contrast to that, just so I don't misspeak on the data. In general, we do have a couple of sites where our bottleneck tends to be hiring staff. So we're actively hiring paraeducator staff so we can expand, because Director Fougere and I have been planning on trying to expand, 10 to 15 kids for certain sites to alleviate that wait list. And of course, we hire as much as we can. But Director Gallinger, can I get you the data for those numbers and send it to you? Thank you.
For breakfast, what percentage of the students are taking advantage of it that are free or reduced lunch? For instance, the Clark, when you said, hey, we had 80 breakfasts served, versus what are percentage are not? Just across the district would be curious.
I have that data specific. I can email it to you because we track free, reduced, and then students who purchase. Off the cuff, I would say it's probably in the neighborhood of 60% of the students who qualify are participating in the program. But I have a detailed spreadsheet I can send to you tomorrow morning.
For these detailed data requests, we'll consolidate them all as part of our board follow-up.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. So our next topic, Superintendent, will be a strategic plan update.
Great. Marcel Hauser is making his way up to the podium and he'll kick us off, and I'll share a bit about one particular slide as we move through the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Marcel Hauser, Senior Advisor and Strategy Member. Purpose of the presentation today is to quickly go over an overview of what the plan is. So we've shared this in previous board meetings, so we'll do a quick review. Then we'll dive into where we are now. So where we are in process, we're in implementation now, so we'll briefly talk about that. Then I'll also highlight some of the key sort of activities over the next 3 years we hope to achieve. So as we get going and dive in, behind the back works, I think. Okay. All right, what the plan is. So brief overview of what the plan is. So we started with the pyramid, which is vision on top. So our vision sort of guides our work. It's a North Star. Our ISD mission and ends. So the ends that we hope all students achieve, That's sort of the top layer. And we went through a process of developing priority areas with community involvement, so a co-design process, where we identified some key areas that we wanted to focus on. That's the priority areas and goals. Then we had strategies, which are the how. So how do we get to those goals? How do we achieve and move the needle? Those are the strategies. And then the outcomes are how we're going to measure those strategies and really tell whether things are working or not, or whether we need to course correct and pivot. And where we are today, and I'll share a little bit more in terms of implementation, we're directly executing in the work streams. So work streams have been created. We are actively working them. We're meeting, we're working the plan now. So we have shifted from design to implementation and execution. This always, just for all of us to continue to read it and say it, right? Even for me to memorize it, spot, but just to say it, our new district vision statement, which is all students thrive as they engage in meaningful learning that unlocks their passion and potential to positively impact the world. And again, that guides everything else, falls and cascades underneath that. And as we talk about where we're going to focus common energy this year, here are the 5 bucketed areas. So these are the 5 priority areas. The first is student well-being. The second is academic opportunities. The third is diverse talent. 4th, authentic engagement. And 5th, organizational effectiveness. And these are our 5 areas over the next 3 years. We're going to focus our energy and really draw together strength, work on our strategies, goals, and really push toward progress. As we go into sort of the breakdown of each one, I'm going to describe this a little bit and help you navigate, and then I'm going to pass back to Superintendent Toyk to talk about a change in one of them. But just as we navigate, you look on top, description, it just tells you what this is about. So student well-being is all about students feeling safe, affirmed. It's about connecting students with resources and supports, basic needs. You'll see 2 separate goals. Each priority area has 2 goals. But in this area, you'll see the 2 separate goals separated by safety and sense of belonging on the left. You'll look to the right, see resources that support basic needs support. So on the right. Then as you look down, you'll see in direct alignment strategies that align to those goals. And I'll just highlight a couple of them one on each side here. So if you look on the left side, underneath the safety and sense of belonging, the bottom bullet is around analyzing district-wide safety plans to include emotional safety. So that really ties into the last presentation from Executive Director Morris, which is, we're going to look across the scale of all of our safety plans and look towards continuous improvement. If you look to the right, we start talking about connecting the resources. There is a goal to implement or strategy to implement social emotional learning for all students. So that's really a district-wide goal or strategy that we'll be working on for the next 3 years. I am going to pass back to Superintendent Toyk to talk about a recent change.
All right, thank you. So all of these slides with the description, goals, and strategies underneath under each of the 5 areas is content we've shared before. So we won't go into that much more. We just want to orient people again and welcome our new student reps to also see the content and know how each of these various priority areas are being accomplished. But I did want to highlight one particular area where we lifted up some detail that had been embedded in the strategies throughout all of our discussion, and also in many discussions in multiple places in terms of our notes, in terms of well-known areas to focus on key milestones. Now, we plan to bring this for further discussion with the board at a work study, and we'll be talking about some other aspects of our learning environment because it does all tie together. But it was just lifting up the specific detail, adding it to the level of the goal area. And so we wanted to show the previous language, which said increase in achievement of meaningful milestones and decrease opportunity gaps. And we pulled forward 3 that had been discussed quite at length in many of our conversations. These are key milestones I want to note because there are many more data points to have and to track, and we do. That's not to say we are not looking at other data points. It is that we're looking at the areas where we have immediate opportunity to adjust course along the way, where we also have had previous opportunity to lead up to that moment and provide the kinds of supports. So that's why 3rd grade. We have these bookends, right? So there's other data points. Our board and our team has talked quite at length around WalkKids. WalkKids is a helpful data point to see as kids enter our system, but we have not necessarily had influence over what happened previously. So we are not looking at tracking that because we didn't have much opportunity to, I mean, it's the first time our students are entering our school. So we're using that to then inform how we move to third grade. On the other end of our system, we have graduation rates. And so that's another important data point that people often look at, but that is a compilation of the many years of the journey. So we're trying to look at where, and we also look at that in arrears. We're looking at them backwards. So these are the moments that we've selected to lift forward as we think about both what we have opportunity to influence before we get to the milestone, and also then what we do after the milestone as well. So I just want to talk more about that rationale, as people might be wondering why not other data points. And these are also backed with some evidence to help us know that they are helpful to look at as they, for our students and their progress moving forward throughout our system. So that's that. And then we can pass it, I can pass it back to you, Mr. Hauser.
And just to piggyback on that, so we have an internal meeting, which we'll talk about a little bit. It's called a stock take, which is just our own internal accountability meeting around metrics. And that P2 team is going to meet on Friday. There's a ton of metrics that we're looking at. Just it's the breadth of sort of what they're measuring. It's there. So I think to your point, we're pulling up the things to the top to sort of kind of consolidate some of this.
Great. I think that's a good step to where we are now on slide 12.
Yeah. So we'll skip ahead a little bit, but this is publicly listed on there, folks who want to go deeper on our website. All right, so where are we now? Like we highlighted, we've created the plan. We're now going into execution of the plan. So this just kind of walks through, reminds on process. We started with a data review. We had workshops, engagement. We shared our plan. It was memorialized in the spring. We are now in the place of executing on and implementing work plans. So a couple, just want to spend a little bit of time on this one. This is our own internal set of routines. So these are the meetings that we have that are going to hold ourselves accountable as a system. And I'll go from left to right. So team check-ins are check-ins by priority team. So the example, the academic opportunity priority team is meeting as a team. So priority lead, area lead, so Dana Bailey, and then with the strategy lead. So they're huddling up once a month, if not more at times, and just talking across and coordinating. The other meeting or way that we're holding ourselves accountable is the milestone monthly reporting. So we've had 2 months of reports so far. That's around the milestones. So the actual workable items, the tangible things we're doing every single month, we're reporting red, green, yellow. How are we doing? Are there barriers? Do we need support? So we've had 2 months of reports so far, and that feeds into some of the critical milestones and the problem solving sessions that we're going to have as well. The third meeting is the problem solving sessions, which is around those critical milestones. So it's looking at, let's look at our implementation plans. You know, where are there barriers? You know, where do we need to cross collaborate and coordinate? Or where do we need to lift up, you know, potential barriers coming in the future? So that's a meeting that's meant to really problem solve and work together. And then the fourth stock takes, as I mentioned, is more specifically about critical data. So we're looking at strategy level metrics. We're talking about what are we measuring? Why are we measuring that? You know, is there alignment with that thing? So our very first one is coming up. Like I said, thank you to the P2 team. That's going to really set the course for us. We'll learn from that. P1 is coming with critical milestones. So Shereen Carver, thank you. They'll take the lead and we'll learn from those processes and continue to improve. And then what it means for staff and students, I want to highlight a little bit of the key activities and things that we should hope to see in the next 3 years. And I'll pick a few of them, but there's more. There's many more that didn't make. This is pulled from a long spreadsheet of things, of items. So, but the one key thing is, I think, social emotional learning, implementing that K-12. So it's moving it out of the, you know, earlier space and earlier education, K-5, and moving it up the chain, middle high. So there's a goal to do that in the next 3 years. There's also implementation of a SEL screening tool, SABRES. I will not try to break down the acronym. I've failed miserably at it every time I do it, but it's a social emotional screening tool, and Shereen can speak to it better than I could, but that's a plan. That's work that's happening actually this year. It's actually happening now, but this year we're looking to implement. And then another piece is, and this is more of a 3-year goal, but the equity-based budget framework. So we're working actively building that. That's a bigger shift in the system to start to budget everything, because it really is an all or nothing thing. You couldn't start with one school and then not do it with other schools. So it's a bigger sort of project and process. There's a lot of research going on with other districts and folks that are using a similar type equity-based budget. So that work is to be highlighted. And again, I talked a little bit about the safety plans and really focusing on student well-being and their sense of safety in the district. The other piece to highlight as well, other opportunities to engage for community, for staff members. We'll have advisory groups that'll come out, branch out of a lot of the strategy groups. We're going to have, chances for folks to come on and actively engage a little bit more deeply. We'll have school visits. We'll continue to meet with folks in the community and gather voice from students and staff. With thought exchange and surveys, we'll continue to do that. I think it shifts in terms of what we should do versus, it's going to change in terms of what's working. Do you feel the impact? And then we left other intentionally because it's really open to, in the nature of our co-design process, what else should we be doing? How should we be connecting? So we're open to really ask that question, and to community, to board, like how else should we be connecting and engaging as we go through this process the next 3 years. And finally, I will wrap with how we plan to communicate. So we have a few things coming. I want to highlight internal ways that we're communicating amongst ourselves as staff members. So we have Friday board updates to the board that we're starting to get in the routine of sharing. We have WAG, which is, I did put the acronym, so week at a glance, and that's to administrators. So as we push out strategic plan updates and directions, we send it that way. We also have the ISD Insider for all staff. And then externally, district website, shout out to Alicia Ingalls, her team. We're working on the launch of the strategic plan website, which it's going up this month. I think I can safe to say that. I think it's ready to go. So we've been working hard. Thank you to the comms team for that. And then 411 district bulletins, school bulletins. So we're going to continue to communicate this and be really proactive around launching the plan, building momentum, and gathering feedback as we go along. That concludes the update. Eager to hear your feedback.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
I'm hoping at some time we can take a deeper dive into the Sabres just to learn more about what is it, what are the questions that are asked for students, how is it being utilized? But I think it's a deeper conversation than we can have here.
Just want to,
It's on.
yeah. I just wanted to ask a quick question about the social emotional learning programs and how you said you were going to expand it from like elementary school to high school. So I'm in Issaquah High School. I have noticed that we have a lot of we are doing social emotional learning. Earlier it used to be during nest time, which is now called flex time, and now I would assume that you would do it at homerooms. So that's the current state. So from here, how do you plan to, what's the plan regarding, you said that there were going to be some sort of expansions, right? So from having these SEL sessions, what are going to be a couple of additional things we're going to do to help improve students feeling safe mentally?
From our amazing student reps. Great question.
I can take that. We do have still plans unfolding, but I want to first and foremost appreciate that question because a lot of the feedback we heard from students last year was that the time allocation and scheduling of where social emotional learning lessons or content was being provided was not working across all the high schools. So we heard that feedback and we adjusted and we launched a social emotional high school committee, and there were several agreements that came out of that. We don't have the full plan in detail to tell you right now, but we did make agreements that at the August time for our staff by high school, there'd be content that could be delivered across all content areas, or there could be social emotional well-being opportunities across all content areas, and taking the different standards of social emotional well-being standards would be sort of the starting point. So that was the overall general plan, and there's work that we're going to be picking up to continue to further that effort. So number one is we heard feedback, we made a change, And we're making a plan to support teachers and students, because it's not just for students as well. It's also how teachers are preparing that.
Yeah.
I will say that earlier this year at our first flex time, our teacher told us that SEL would be implemented across all content areas instead of just in flex. And many students were happy about that. And I just wanted to say that I noticed that, and that was a good change.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So as a diehard project manager, I just appreciate the level of clarity and structure. So thank you. And with that, we will transition to our next topic, which is our bond refunding update. I know we have a couple of folks here with us from Piper Sandler as well. Superintendent, I'll pass it to you to get us started.
Great. I'm gonna, I see Mariah Banasic joining us here, and she'll introduce herself and then also introduce our guest presenters for the bond refunding update.
Good evening, Mariah Banasic, Executive Director of Finance and Budget. So last year we refunded the 2012 bonds, and that resulted in about $2 million in tax savings. And last year we had the financing plan presentation and the resolution in one board meeting. This year, we're going to present on the financing plan, and then the resolution will be presented at the next board meeting. And so I want to present, so we have Trevor Carlson from Piper Sandler, Managing Director, and we have Scott Bauer from Northwest Municipal Advisors joining us tonight to present on the financing plan.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate, Mariah, the introduction, and School Board Superintendent, thank you for having us here tonight. The presentation that we'll use as our guidepost and our milestone for our presentation tonight is up on the board. But for the record, my name is Trevor Carlson. I work for Piper Sandler and has served as the district's bond underwriter for quite a while. Just want to kind of step back. We have, as Mariah mentioned, the opportunity to possibly save taxpayers some anticipated interest costs that are currently on the books today, and refinance those or refund those bonds at a lower borrowing cost to save some taxpayers a few dollars on their annual property taxes. So that opportunity is in front of us now. We'll give you a little background on interest rates and what those savings look like in today's environment. And I'll have Scott round it out with our milestones for our schedule at the end. Just from again, backing up high level interest rates. We've seen interest rates increase over the last, let's just say 18 months or so, as the Federal Reserve has tried to stop and quell inflation. From the lower right-hand side of the graphic that's in front of you, you can see we were at all-time low interest rates during really that COVID period time of massive fiscal and monetary stimulus. And the goal was, let's keep the economy going. Let's put interest rates down close to zero, keep things humming along. They've come up substantially, but I'll show you some of the kind of the back of the envelope math to show you that there are some potential savings with the 2013 A bonds. And please, if you have questions, interrupt. I would love to answer those while they're fresh on your mind. So that's kind of the backdrop of what we're seeing. The 1 year snapshot, it's not as dramatic as that longer term graph. And I think that's kind of bodes well for us moving forward. So from the bond refunding candidate perspective, the 2013 A bonds are the bonds that we are considering refunding or refinancing. Those were issued back in May of 2013. The callable principal amount of those bonds is $34.86 million, and those bonds mature out through maturities in 28 and 29. The average coupon on those bonds is 4%. Think of that as the cost of the existing mortgage, if you will. We'll boil it down into those terms. The important piece there, the next row down, is the call date and the call price. Remember, when you sell bonds in the original issuance, we build in some optionality. So usually within about 10 years, we have the option to buy those bonds back from investors, call those bonds, redeem those bonds at face value. And that gives us the opportunity to do that and then replace those bonds with bonds that have a lower borrowing cost. So that's kind of the mechanics that we're thinking about executing. On the projected refunding results on the bottom portion of the slide, I've put two columns. One says current interest rates, and the column on the right, I want to show some sensitivity to give you a sense of how much can interest rates move and still be within our target. And what we're targeting in the resolution that you'll see in a couple weeks is a minimum net present value savings of 1%. We are striving to move as quickly as possible to lock in borrowing costs that are low in today's environment. So that middle column shows the true interest cost is about 3%. Again, old mortgage 4, new mortgage 3. That interest cost savings right now on a net present value basis is about $1.5 million or 4.31%. That second column over, or the far column on the right, shows that there's 66 basis points, so 0.66%, a little bit more than 0.5% of cushion if interest rates rise before we get to our minimum savings target. And if we exceed that, we pull back, we reassess, we wait for the market to come to us. Any questions thus far? Okay, seeing none, hearing none. The next slide, slide 3, shows projected refunding savings. Second column in from the right with the green box shows the annual savings as of today with today's interest rates, about $500,000 of savings in 27, 28, and 29 for a total of 1.7 million. Again, the number on the previous slide was a present value number, so that number is smaller as we've discounted that stream of cash flow. I put down on the bottom portion on the lower left-hand side what that could mean to the average taxpayer. Sometimes folks want to know, what does that mean to me? That large dollar amount spread over a very, very large tax base that Issaquah has really starts to drive the personal savings, if you will, to the individual homeowner or taxpayer to pretty small dollar amounts. So it's if my laser pointer works and I don't push the wrong button, maybe it doesn't. Zero, step over to show you here, less than 1 penny. So on $1 million home, it's about $9. Okay, just wanted to put that into perspective, but it's still a large number from the aggregate perspective. So something that we want to try and achieve on behalf of the district's taxpayers. And I'll turn it over to Scott to talk a little bit about the milestones and the schedule.
Thank you, Trevor. And good evening, Scott Bauer with Northwest Municipal Advisor. So we serve as the municipal advisor, which provides you some checks and balances on this transaction through a negotiated sale. But I'll just hit a couple of these dates. So September 28th is the next time you'll see this in front of you. So Scott McJanet from K&L Gates, your bond counsel, will be presenting the bond resolution to you. October 10th or 11th is the rating call with Moody's and Standard & Poor's, when the senior staff and financing team presents your credit story to them in order to get a bond rating on these bonds. Fast forwarding then to November 7th, that's the date the actual bonds are sold. So offered to investors, interest rates and yields are set on that date. So they'll be locked in then. So do hope for low interest rates until that date. And then almost a month later then is the bond closing. So proceeds would be available and deposited with the escrow agent where they'll invest them until the 2013 A bonds are then eventually paid off. But as of December 5th, they'll be off the district's books. And with that, I'll pause and see if there are any questions.
We're very quiet tonight, and I'm excited that I actually know what this all means this year.
We got you there through
I know.
last transaction.
Last time I had a lot of questions. This time I was like, I get it. This is great.
So the savings that you're talking about, the 1.7 million, that's based on interest rates where they are today?
Correct.
And
Yes.
we have some wiggle room between now and December.
Yes.
And there's a point that if they shifted dramatically, we simply wouldn't do it, right?
That's absolutely correct. And you see the 1% is the lowest savings threshold. I think if we ever started getting close to even that threshold, I'd be discussing that with your staff as to whether we'd proceed or not.
Wonderful. So we'll see the actual resolution next meeting then. Okay,
Yes. And your lawyer will be here to present that.
perfect. Okay.
Well, I'm just wondering, do you know how often, like, so, rumors are always rumors. So rumors are the feds are not going to raise rates the next time they meet, but there's a possibility at the end of October that they might. What would happen if they did like a 0.25% raise? Do you know how that affects, or is there not a net actual correlation? So it's hard to really judge.
It is hard to judge. And so what the Federal Reserve controls is the overnight lending rate between banks. So that's the shortest end of the yield curve. These bonds go out for a few more years past that. So it might not have a material impact that ripples through the entire yield curve, right? The yield curve is inverted in certain spots now, which is relatively rare. So it might not have a material impact on the bonds that we're offering in the coming weeks. But that's something we will definitely monitor and take into account.
Yeah, it's
Great,
a
thank
little
you.
less about the rate, I think, these days, and more about the message that they communicate when they do it. If they're going to say that they're done raising, then that might be beneficial to our long-term rates.
Yeah, great question.
Anything else? Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the time.
Okay, and with that, we will move forward. Was there any student comment about that last topic?
This meeting has an amazing amount of just information coming at us.
Yeah, this time.
Which is not our normal cadence. Yeah, thank you for the word. But actually, it's probably really good for a first student meeting to just.
It's a broad.
Here are the million things that the school board deals with.
Bond refunding being one of them. Okay, so next we have our monitoring of EL8, which is communications and support. Do I have a motion?
I move the board accept the internal annual monitoring report for EL8, communications and support to the board as presented.
Second.
Thank you. So we'll start with, I think, a presentation, and then this topic will have public input if there's any people would like to give. So I will call for that before we get into board discussion. Superintendent?
Great, thank you. As we continue to, actually, EL8 addresses one of the topics I'm bringing forward, which is to make our reports more concise, more coherent, more relevant. One of my commitments is to ensure that we are truly updating them year over year to reflect our work. So there's always going to be new things that do come up. So there are, my approach through the revision and preparation for this report for this year was to tighten up language, to condense evidence, and to adjust interpretation or evidence based on last year's board discussion and also student input from last year. Some specific things I'll name that were brought forward sort of globally, and then I will open up to discussion and feedback and questions, was to ensure that there were specific aspects of accessible language, getting rid of acronyms. That's on the minor side of the adjustments, but also taking into account some of the feedback around more precise trends, not only locally and nationally, but more specific to also within and across our buildings. So I named that specifically as in my interpretation. There was a request for data in terms of a chart. And I think that'll be an interesting discussion point because that is a new component here. And it is about one specific area, which is 4220. And I would say that when I look past back at the 3 reports prior to this year, it actually was the same evidence every year. It was verbatim. And so the discussion I think is important because we shifted how we responded to some of the feedback and discussion from last year by adding a chart. So that was a request that the board had made. And, I want to see where that conversation may go overall. And I would say that there's a couple, Yeah, those are my primary things, and would like to hear feedback or discussion and inquiry from the board.
Okay, thank you. Before we do that, how about we take a pause for any public input on this topic? Is there any input in the room? Is there any on Zoom? Thank you. Okay, we can go to any board questions, comments, discussion. Director Maraldo.
And so I do think that I was very late in getting prepared for tonight's meeting. So my apologies to that. I did have questions around number 11. And that is on the bottom on page 7. If you looked at the marked up version, I don't know what version it is here, but point 11. First of all, the wording of the bullet point, which is board work, I don't think it's very clear on exactly what we're asking for. So a procedure for informing the board in a timely manner of the administrative disposition of complaints presented to the superintendent by the board. So in reading that, I'm like, so are we complaints presented to the superintendent by the board? Is that if we're complaining to the superintendent? Because then that's none of this data. So I'm not sure, so I think it's always been interpreted for us that the superintendent's going to let us know about complaints from the community. But actually how it's written, it's like, well, the disposition of the administration versus, does it seem like, am I reading that right? How am I reading this and how do others interpret that?
Yeah, the wording is going the wrong direction. Presented to the superintendent by the board. It's the opposite direction, correct?
So I think we have board work in there. And then my second one was to the table that was then presented raised a ton of questions for me. And this is just me not understanding. And so I did talk to Superintendent Talia earlier today. So Stephen, if you scroll down a little bit, we can look at the actual table that talks about complaints received via the 4220 complaints form. And when it had 4 for the past year, and then it had 000, I'm like, there is no way we had 000 complaints. I know I've been at appeals hearings, so that can't be good data. And so it was really this discussion of, well, what complaints and how did they come through that they eventually got to the board wasn't necessarily between a 4220 form, because that form is really just for complaints about a staff member. And so then I looked up complaints, just if you go complaint forms, there's like 5 different ways you can complain about things. If it's a Title IX complaint, it's in writing, but there's no form associated with it. So I think there's a big area. So my first thought is I thought that number 12 was really around communicating to the board about complaints within the district. So how are we managing that? What kind of complaints are we getting? Some of them might be informal. How are we tracking to some extent when we receive informal complaints and how they're resolved? And on bigger complaints, what is the resolution process and kind of some statistics around that? That's what I thought number 11 was about. And if that's the case, then I feel like this data isn't really giving me what I want. And do we want the district to have a better process by which you lodge a complaint? And I think that's been an ongoing question since practically I've been on the board, is how do people lodge a complaint? What's considered informal versus formal, and what are the process? People are scared to make a formal complaint because it sounds very scary. I'm making a formal complaint. Then you kind of sound like a Karen, right? So, but what is that process? And how do we, especially in such a diverse community with so many people that are not from the United States, then trying to say, now I'm engaging the government, and they might come from countries where there's retaliation if you do that. So then what is our real process for this? So I think that, you know, I'm doing some better reading of number 11 and not sure that what our intent is. And then I'm not sure that we're really getting to the broader issue of how difficult and cumbersome it is to actually raise a complaint in a formal manner, and how to track that. So there's my can of worms opened.
It's a good can. I mean, and my 4.5 years, we have talked about it each year. So absolutely. I agree with you. There's probably a cleaning up of what are we actually asking for? And then a question of how do you fulfill what we're actually asking for? So I think we probably do have some work as a board to be more clear on what is our expectation of hearing complaints. Maybe my question is, and I actually didn't notice this before it came up now, is what does the 4 actually represent? What is in the 4 today?
They are concerns that came up through and then were landed across the different levels of schools. The nature of all those.
No,
I don't think
mean,
you're asking that, but
I'm
you're-
not asking.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not asking that. But are they appeals we would have seen? Are they what?
Great question. So
Yeah.
this was also part of the dialogue that Director Moraldo and I had earlier, which is 4220 is not necessarily the automatic pipeline to board role and responsibility in appeals. And this actually might require, as part of the board work, you know, let's just lay out all the information to make sense of all the different ways. One, an individual in our system, staff, student, family, citizen could make a complaint. And let's actually also then talk about where the board hears, right, different, because there's different processes for different types of concerns or complaints. And what is a complaint? And then how do we define some of those other verbiage points that Director Moraldo talked about, formal, informal. But to be clear, the 4220 has been a lot of the topic of the board discussion over every year, I would say. I heard, yes, I heard that. And it is not the only way to share complaints. And I also think it's important to state that a complaint or a concern is best resolved with the person that it is most relevant to. So if I have a question or concern with a colleague, I should go to them first and try to resolve that. And so there are countless ways that happens. And we do make sure that we're very clear about how that can happen, because especially it would mostly occur at a school level. And those are informal conversations. People are problem solving, resolving questions, concerns all day. So that is very informal in my mind and something that would be very difficult to track. But if we're looking at what happens with how the board views appeal, like when the board will hearing appeals, because that is part of various processes, that is a different data set potentially, and or different, I think that's maybe a different ask than what the executive limitation currently states, but I'm not sure if that was a conversation that has been had before as well. So disconnecting complaints from appeals and or connecting them is an important conversation.
Well, and I never really thought about it before, but this is talking, as Director Moraldo says, this is talking about 4220, which is complaints about staff or personnel. I think all the and we've heard a lot of appeals in the last few months, and none of them have been 4220. They've all been about him.
Right.
And yet I know we had one that was about a staff member that we heard back in 2020, and it's not on here. So that's why I'm really confused.
Yeah, that's right.
And if there's a staff concern, that it wouldn't go necessarily through the 4220 process, because it might be immediate. If there's for example, staff misconduct, that would happen immediately, and that would have to go through a formal channel through our human resources processes. So that wouldn't be a 4220 complaint or would not fit into that procedure process.
So I think for me, that's why having just tracking one source of how we lodge, how somebody from the community or from staff, because it could be a staff member that's lodging a complaint. So having it just this one way, knowing that there's multiple ways, almost makes this data feel confusing because it's not giving the full picture.
Yeah, but I think you also hit upon the problem at the beginning, which is it's not really clear what we're asking for
yeah.
here. And it's really clunky.
It looks like we had a very similar conversation in 2021. I'm just looking at simple search of our website. So maybe what our opportunity. Yeah, I think based on our unclear request within the EL today, maybe the best outcome is that we look at how do we take retreat time or work study time, which retreat time is another question I have for later, or work study time to look at the various ways in which forms, et cetera, in which complaints come in, what happens to them, and what it is that landing on what is it we specifically would like to know about them so that we can deliver a bit more clarity in the request. Does that make sense? Any other questions on this one? Go ahead.
I think for me, I'll just start at the top. I think the general interpretation probably needs to be expanded for me when it says the superintendent shall not fail to appropriately inform and support the board in its work. And I feel like the general interpretation really focuses it too narrowly on, it says for board discussion, action, and monitoring of the executive limitations and ends conducted at public board meetings. Because our work is so much more than that. And so there's retreats, there's strategic planning sessions, there's work studies, which are the most important to me. And so supporting our work also is for the work we do as we represent the district at WASDA or NSBA, because we're often asking for district data. For example, as we coming up, we'll talk about transportation as an issue. So I think the general interpretation needs to be expanded to actually match what we actually do, because then you go through all the different items, which really kind of highlights all the various things. And so I'm just going to go through, for me, when I reflect back, because this is in arrears, and for our students, this is a really weird thing, is we look back on the last school year and how did this go for us. And I think there are a lot of challenges, and I want to first give the say from the top is that I really appreciate that we've been able to have really open dialogue with our superintendent and to say, hey, these are the things that we need to see happen differently or better. And I really feel like the start of this academic year has been better from a communication standpoint and a preparation standpoint. So I want to say that, but yet this is reflecting back on the 12 months prior. So in that context, starting with number one, the timeliness of meeting materials was lacking many times, which really made it hard for us to do our work, particularly with strategic planning sessions, where we would get a meeting packet like right when we sat down. And that's a really important topic for us to be talking about that we need time to prepare for. So timeliness, I really appreciate, for instance, the last two meetings for our work studies, the materials have been sent out ahead of time. So I'm ready. So it helps the conversation, like with the bond conversation, go really smoothly today because I've already seen it. I've reviewed it. I can walk in knowing, hey, here are the questions I'm going to ask. And it just allows for a more efficient process. Just going in order for number two, I feel like reflecting back on last year, the board had to raise and elevate the concern about the 2018 capital projects levy and the concern about all the projects there that weren't completed. And we had asked those questions. So I'm not sure that there was when it says shall not fail to report in a timely manner an actual or anticipated non-compliance with any policy of the board. And then, that's why we did an emergency monitoring of EL 13. So, and I see it listed in there talking about EL 13. But I wanted to elevate that as a concern. Number 3 is something that I think this is the one that I struggled the most with how we navigate this. This is a delicate dance, and there's probably different needs that we all as a board individually or collectively may have. But some of the things that have come up, and it's particularly in the corridor schools, is at Issaquah Middle School, hearing how the day was starting with busing, for example, and that the students all have to sit on the bus at Issaquah Middle School before they walk in. And that was contributing, in my opinion, to a lot of the behavioral things we were seeing at IMS. Our superintendent then said, hey, we have a plan for this. And then I find out weeks later from community members that actually that plan didn't actually happen. And I understand the reasons why, but that communication loop was never closed. And that's a really important thing, because our community here is like, hey, this was the problem, there's our solution, done. But that actually wasn't the case. And that's a really, really important thing from a transparency standpoint that is really important. The other thing is, when I hear that there are fights, like frequent fights happening at Issaquah High School, like last year, that's not something that I should hear when I'm out and about up in Sammamish. I need to hear that early. And so those are trend parts that are hugely, hugely important, that were surprises to me, because I don't experience those things up in the part of the district that I live in and the schools that my kids attend. And so I was caught off guard by the numerous reports I kept hearing out of IMS and IHS. And those are really important things from a communication standpoint that are critical for me personally to be able to do my work in representing and interfacing with our community. I'll pause there because I'm about halfway done. If people wanted to contribute before I just keep going, unless you would prefer I just keep going through my list. Okay. Number 6, the middle school PE discussion took many meetings and many conversations. And even when we finally got information at the end of the last school year, it still didn't answer the question. And so I feel like through numerous dialogues, through email or conversations to clarify what it is we're looking for, or that I was looking for. And then we had dialogue here in the boardroom about middle school PE. It just wasn't satisfactorily, it just wasn't answered. The question that was asked wasn't answered. And I struggle with that. And so have it being listed as an example as evidence used for compliance was a bit of a struggle for me. And later, wasn't used in 6, but later on it's used. And so I'm like, really, I would say that's an example of where incomplete or inaccurate or whatever word you want to use for communication was what I would have used it as an example. And then number 12, the elementary grading periods. And when I reflect back on that, I really feel like it was sold as kind of like how you go to a grocery store and you're going to go buy stuff and you're like, look at all the stuff that's on sale. Well, but we raised the price of it and then said that it's on sale. And that's how I felt like the communication about our elementary grading periods came across. Not just to me, but to our community, to say, so in the last school year, so you guys, how many here were elementary students in our district? Okay, lots of you. So last year, our school district moved to providing grading or report cards only in the 2nd and 3rd trimesters of elementary school. And I don't think that was clearly communicated to our community. But then to say last spring, like, oh, well, we're going to make it better because when we move to semesters, then they'll get their first report card earlier in January, when actually the reality is they're getting the report card later because they were getting it in December. And so it felt very like manipulated communication. And then I had a hard time with that. And then the last one is also for number 12. And this is something I could have totally missed, but social emotional learning is near and dear to this board's heart. So Sabers, and maybe you had shared that in some email update and I missed it. And so if I did, I apologize. But that's a huge change from doing BZ and SDQ. And this is something that in the community we get talked about a lot. We talk about with students, we talk about with staff. And so I learned about it by reading through just the weekly bulletins that I get from the schools that I'm signed up in, and it's on all of them because it's coming from the district. To me, that's a pretty big curricular change if we're going to be changing how we assess students' risk factors for mental health. I think that's something that we should be aware of. And I'm not saying I don't have any plus minus pros cons. I don't have an opinion about it or the process, but I do have a concern about the communication. And that's obviously something that's coming forward in this year, so that wouldn't be reflected in this report. But for me, it would be an example of number 12, that's a significant trend in what we do that we should be aware of because it impacts every student in our district. And it is something that we as board members are talked to, and talked with a lot about when it comes to social emotional learning.
Other thoughts, comments? Questions? Yeah, I mean, I think I would echo a number of things that Director Gallagher just said. I think it was a tough year for communications. I think in many ways, when you look at external communications, there was a lot of steps forward, consistency, format, website updates, lots of things. But I think going through what was a transition year for us as a board, I think it just was a challenging year. Maybe not unexpected. I have too many nots or uns in there, but not unexpected. But I do think the challenges of the last year were significant in getting used to the new cycle. And that I don't know that I would change the items here, but maybe the presentation of them is a bit more positive or optimistic than the way it felt going through the year. I don't know how to say that. But it is a year of transition for us.
I mean, I feel like a couple of things on this list were issues. The board gave feedback. Well, for example, the timeliness of board materials. We said, oh, wait, that was a lot to dump on us all at once. And that there was a pretty immediate response to changing that and addressing that issue. I did have kind of the same feeling about a couple of the things that you talked about that we didn't know, like the busing situation at IMS. And I didn't know until this meeting that we were changing from BZ. But some of that, I don't know, like some of it's in the weeds of what the district does. And I think it's unclear at what level down we need to get communication. So again, that may be, I don't know, sort of a learning curve. I think a lot of this has been addressed as we move forward.
Yeah, Director Murata.
Well, and I think especially when regards to, I think it's number 12 that talks about, what's significant modifications. Like, so we use words, but we're not defining them. And we're in this relationship building period with the superintendent to define what is significant to one person versus another. And that is really a learning process that we're going to have to go through, because what might not be significant to me might in fact be significant to somebody else. And so trying to figure out where that sweet spot is of not getting into the weeds, going back to we're the FAA, where exactly how much communication comes back to us. And so, so I think that's part of that is relationship building it. And part of it is actually saying when things happen, by the way, this happened, and how is it that I'm finding out today that we've radically changed our SEL, in my opinion. So again, and you might not have ever said, like, the board wants me to do this work. This is a means, the means by which we're able to help students with their life management and personal awareness, students living healthy, satisfying, protective lives, is we want to change what the SEL questions are and this process by which we do that. And that might be seen by some as, okay, go and do and ask whatever. And somebody else is like, well, wait a second, I have all these questions. What's this new thing? What kind of questions are being asked? How are you using that data? How are you storing that data? So it's hard to know when the board's going to have a distinct interest in something. And so I think it's good for us to hear where those concerns are, because it's calibrating what do we consider significant.
But I think that's just the point is, unless it's communicated, you can't know where that either all of us want this information, have this question or concern, or none of us do. And that's my point, is that these need to be elevated as communication things. So it's not about getting in the weeds of the operational, like, hey, you changed this, but the communicating of the changes is what's really important, or communicating changes of grading periods. That is something that affects 8,000 elementary students. That's something that I need to not be surprised by.
Yeah, and it's funny because this goes back to a conversation we had, like, I want to say a dozen years ago, when we would ask questions. And I remember Connie Fletcher just saying, that's means, you can't ask about means. And that was when we had the whole conversation about policy governance the Issaquah way, which is, yes, it's means. But if somebody stops me in the grocery store and asks me about it, I better have an answer. And so even though, yes, those things belong to the superintendent, it is still important that the high points be communicated to the board, so that when we get stopped in the grocery store, we have some clue of what people are talking about. And I was also taken by surprise by that whole elementary grading thing. And I would say that one definitely rises to something we should know about. Or be informed about, I should say. The fact that we're changing the SEL process, I'm glad I know about it now, but I didn't feel like it was something that needed to be communicated to me, at the time it was done. That really is a means. So, and I think that's because the board and the superintendent are still, getting to know each other. I think that's, we have to find that sweet spot of what rises to that level. And as Marnie says, some of them may be different from board member to board member.
I think for me, I like your conversation of, if I get stopped in the grocery store, and I think maybe it's kind of processing, like, if a board member gets asked about this, or would this be something that is likely for the board to address? Like, are they going to be asked about this? So something like an elementary grading that's going to affect every single elementary student, and the parents are going to know the difference. Yeah, I'm going to get asked about that. And so I think those are some of the things, like, kind of that, what's the grocery store likelihood?
Or our students talking about it. And that's another one. So,
speaking of students, a couple of them have raised their hands, so.
I can't see their names from here. Naomi.
All right, going back to the IMS and Issaquah High School topic, with the buses, I have been in the Issaquah School District since I was in elementary school. I came here the summer before my first grade, and then I went to Clark Elementary and then Issaquah Middle, and now I'm in Issaquah High School. I can testify that Issaquah Middle School does have quite a reputation among our students of being not the best learning environment, and of being quite tense regarding just social student relationships with each other. I have heard many things And I have also heard that many of these situations were not handled very well, and that students did not see results, or they were afraid of speaking up because they did not want to cause any problems with the staff or like their own personal lives, or because they did not realize that they could do something about it. Because there are many students that want to make a change, but they have no idea how to do that. So I feel as student reps and as board members and as a community, we need to do better in helping our students communicate with each other, as well as with the people that can help them to improve their lives and improve their learning environment, because that is not something middle schoolers should have to deal with.
Thank you. Was there another person? Thank you.
A couple of reflections that I am that are top of mind for me upon hearing your feedback on EL8. The first is I would agree that we had to figure out different ways, and I was very open and proactively sought out feedback along the way in the spirit of understanding each individual, but also the whole, right? So there's a, where is a spot? And I do appreciate this phrasing, although more informal, around what's the grocery store question, or what's the student question that might come my way at home over dinner. So I do appreciate that. There's some coalescing around that, because that feels like that's the right middle ground, so to speak, between a wide range of communication needs and level of detail. I welcome conversation on the means, because it is about being informed. So I want to be clear that that is something that I'd welcome in terms of what are those questions, because that is a helpful part of what I would expect to be a conversation between people as it relates to how we're achieving our outcomes and reaching the board's ends in mind. And I will also say the volume and change in the pace of the work last year was pretty significant in a different way than I would say the COVID years were. First and foremost, I was new. You were new to me. There were many changes to our system overall as we moved into last year, combined with the fact that I accomplished something that I know had been on the task in mind of the board for many years, which was to bring forward a strategic plan, which actually meant also figuring out what is the right content to provide in preparing for that work. And I appreciated the feedback that we did get in the middle of the year, as we were kind of in the first month and a half of that, and we did adjust course pretty quickly. And for us, it was a hustle. So sometimes content was being created because we were working at a fast pace. We were taking in new information, we were consolidating, we were summarizing and synthesizing large volumes of data. That's not an excuse, but I do want to say that was what was going on. And so we were also in the hustle mode too. Which did have a ripple effect with how the board experienced that delivery of information in a timeliness fashion. So overall, I would say those are some context points that I am just sharing. We did more presentations. So the team also adjusted to preparing more information for board meetings than had been previously expected and or part of the pattern. That being said, we can always get better. And I can always get better. And I appreciate the feedback as well for many of these points. And I do have some I have some notated follow-up items that are not relevant for right now in this space and time, but I do have some follow-up items based on what examples you cited back to me.
And I'll just say, because I want to be very clear, because this is monitoring in arrears, and I've elevated my concerns about last year, both to you individually and then as a board, and then now, just because I don't believe that there's compliance for the year past. It is not a reflection at all about what I believe this year will bring going forward. And I just want to make that very clear to you and to anyone who's listening.
Thank you for that. I think one of maybe my sidebar comment is in thinking about as we do look forward in onboarding new board members, which we will do here end the year, beginning of next, is how do we use this as an experience that we've gone through in the last year in onboarding new superintendent and administrators, and how does that help update our approach, similar to what we just did with our student reps, right? What's that onboarding step? How do we get some of those unverbalized items out earlier, or at least clarity what they might be, as well as how do we continue the conversation? Because I'm sure we haven't hit every kind of pocket or concern yet to give a sense as a board of what might some of these areas where awareness would be important. So I think that'll be important for us to take forward and be mindful in the onboarding steps as well. So much work we have. Any additional comments on this item before we get to the motion that's on that we have in front of us? Awesome. Was I supposed to take public comment on this? Yes. I did ask for public comment. Okay, I did it. It was just a while ago. We were going so fast at first. Okay, awesome. Okay, with that, we will move to a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
So it's 3 in favor, 1 against. That motion passes. Thank you. And with that, we will move on to legislative matters. Director Gallinger, do you have any updates or discussion for us on this point?
Yep, just to let the board know that end of next week, I'll be going to represent the board at what was formerly called Legislative Assembly. Now it's called General Assembly because it reviews all policies as well as legislative policies as our organization looks to see what are we going to collectively advocate for statewide as the next legislative session is in its planning stages. So if there are particular topics you want to make sure that I represent Issaquah about, please do reach out before next Thursday.
Any additional items on this one? Thank you. Announcements and correspondence. Any additional items that need to be added besides those included? Director Maraldo.
I had 2 that came in today, one from our cause looking to meet, and another from, where is it? C. Sires, SIRES, who is a new reporter for the Issaquah Reporter, and asked if we could get together just so he learned about education. And I'm like, and I'm not the board president. Now, if you want to be with my other hat, I will go ahead and do that, but I am off the record.
Yes, I think we all received that
Okay.
inquiry today, including superintendent.
I do plan to respond to that email and work with Bethany to help get on something on the calendar. So I'm happy to be the representative for the district on that front.
Any other items? Okay, with that, we will move on to calendar and future agenda topics. The one I will, the first one I at least will mention in this one is we did fully submit our application to the WASDA Board of Distinction Award. Did that on September 6th with supervision from Director Moore, just to make sure that all went in appropriately and we got our appropriate receipts back. So thank you for everyone's work on that submission. We did also receive our combined, I do have our combined results from our board self-assessment. So I do have that to share as well now. The other item is I do not believe we have scheduled any fall retreat time.
Oh, goody.
So I will say that out loud, knowing that we did just agree to accelerate our SIP meetings into the fall. So that will be something I will take away and do some thinking on about fall retreat, because that would be a great time to talk about some of the board work we just talked about, as well as that board self-assessment. So I will start thinking about that topic as well. Are there any additional items that we need to discuss for calendaring or future agenda? Yes.
Well, I think definitely I'd like some more information around SEL in general, just really how the integration, the way it is and how students will be experiencing it. So I think that's important. And then I think at some point, I don't know where we're going to have the discussion, but around number 11, around complaints. I think I don't know if it's a work study, but at some point we need to have, or an agenda item, but we need to have a conversation about the board's expectation in this.
Yep.
And then we'll probably have to have a committee go off and rewrite number 11, but that after all these years, and I'm like, I've been here 14 years and read that every year. And this year it's like, that makes no sense. I think I really just read the interpretations and not actually what we're asking for.
It's a process. Any other?
I think reflecting on what was presented to us today from moving towards action planning for the strategic plan, I think having a conversation with the board on like what type of data do we want to see or would be in compliance when it comes to those 3 milestones? Because there are many ways the data can be presented and sliced. And since it's going to be those that will be really critical, I think particularly just to choose third grade reading, for example, on how it looks and that way early on you have that sense on, because it's going to be beyond just the typical by building, by our typical breakdown. I mean, there's going to be more nuances to it that we're going to want to probably know. And so having that dialogue early before the planning gets too far down stage would be, I think, really helpful and informative to your team.
I had an update from a calendar item from last time, which is that Director Gallagher offered to conduct meetings with Issaquah Chamber of Commerce, and we are doing a meeting tomorrow actually with the Issaquah Chamber Board, where Director Gallagher will be present, as well as myself and Julia Bamba. And thank you.
Okay. Any other? I have those requests for future agenda items, and we have agenda planning tomorrow. So thank you for that input. If with seeing any other topics,